Good morning, and welcome to the Jefferson Parish Emergency Operations Center in Gretna, Louisiana. Thank you all for joining us as we announce the 2025 hurricane season forecast for the Atlantic region. My name is Kim Doster. I am the Director of Communications for NOAA, and today I am happy to serve as the host for this important announcement. This year commemorates 20 years since Hurricane Katrina made landfall just 50 miles from where we stand here in Gretna today. As we announce the outlook for the 2025 hurricane season today, Katrina stands as a grim reminder of the need for preparedness and planning in advance of all severe weather and natural disasters. The National Weather Service Public Affairs team are the media contacts for today's event. At the conclusion of this news conference, they can be reached at nws.pa@noaa.gov. The news release and graphics related to today's announcement will be available on noaa.gov shortly. For those of you joining us by webinar, this news conference is being recorded, so if you wish not to be recorded, please disconnect at this time. Today's news conference features about 20 minutes of remarks by our speakers, followed by a question and answer session from reporters. We will take questions in the room first, followed by reporters joining us virtually. Our speakers today are Cynthia Lee Sheng, the president of the Jefferson Parish, acting NOAA Administrator Laura Grimm, National Weather Service Director Ken Graham, and participating in our Q&A session, we also have Matt Rosenkrantz, who is our lead hurricane season outlook forecaster. It is a privilege to introduce Cynthia Lee Sheng, the Jefferson Parish president. Ms. Lee Sheng helped lead Jefferson Parish through active hurricane seasons in 2020 and 2021, and she is continuing to help actively manage recovery efforts from Hurricane Ida. Please help me welcome Cynthia Lee Sheng.
Good morning, and thank you for being here. I'm Cynthia Lee Sheng, president of Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, and on behalf of our parish, I want to welcome you to our Emergency Operations Center. We're excited to host our partners at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the National Weather Service. Those of us who have lived in hurricane-prone areas know that NOAA's outlook is highly anticipated every year. This forecast is the framework that provides us with a first look at what we can expect, and in a way signals the start of storm season. Here in Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, we are prepared, but while government plays a vital role, it is every citizen's responsibility to be prepared for a disaster. Preparing for a hurricane is a whole community effort, and residents and business owners are urged to do their part now by having a plan in place. The best way to thrive during a disaster is by making critical decisions beforehand. A community that is more informed and prepared will have a greater opportunity to rebound quickly from weather and climate-related events. I'd like to thank our emergency management team and all of our Jefferson Parish employees who work collectively year-round to prepare for, respond to, and recover from hurricanes. We opened this state-of-the-art Emergency Operations Center in 2011, a concrete reminder of the unified response that emerged in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina's devastation almost 20 years ago. When Katrina barreled into the Gulf Coast in August 2005, it resulted in more than 1,800 deaths and $125 billion in damages. It also forever altered the course of state and federal disaster policy and triggered significant changes in emergency preparedness at all levels. As we mark the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina and prepare for this year's hurricane season, it's important to acknowledge that our region is much better off today than we were then. In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, the federal government invested over $14 billion in one of the largest public works projects in history, Levees, flood walls, pumping stations, and canal closing structures were built to reduce the risk of flooding and storm surge. The state of Louisiana invested in major coastal projects for hurricane risk reduction. And our local citizens paid for major drainage upgrades, pumping stations, safe houses throughout our entire parish. In 2021, Hurricane Ida put our system to the test, and our system withstood the challenge. Due to mitigation efforts, our region did not experience the widespread flooding seen after Hurricane Katrina. It's estimated that $13 is saved for every $1 spent on mitigation efforts. Hurricane Katrina also changed the face of disaster recovery. Key agencies have learned to work together to provide assistance, coordinate efforts, and ensure efficient response. In the years since Hurricane Katrina, we have strengthened our building codes, ratified several dozen pre-placed emergency contracts that get activated during a disaster, and continuously engage in emergency response training and tabletop exercises with our staff. For instance, just this week, we held our annual public-assisted evacuation exercise to test how we would evacuate our most vulnerable residents ahead of a hurricane, with personnel from 19 different local and state departments who will all have a role in helping our most vulnerable citizens get out of harm's way. We have learned now that when disaster strikes, everyone has a role in building back our community. And we know local and state governments like ours are doing the same things all around the country to lessen the impacts of the increasing hazards we face: rapid intensification of storms, stronger winds, more flooding. And every storm teaches us a different lesson. I want to thank our many partners at the local, state, and national level for working alongside us to stay prepared. Together, we will remain a thriving, resilient community even after disaster strikes. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Acting NOAA Administrator Laura Grimm. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cynthia. And thanks for everyone being here today. Good morning. I was able to walk around and meet some of your employees, and they are just top notch and really speak highly of you. So it's an honor to be here. Thank you for hosting us. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about this important announcement about NOAA's 2025 Atlantic Hurricane Season Outlook. The United States is fortunate to have the world's best scientists, computer and modeling experts, and meteorologists at NOAA, who provide us with accurate forecasts of tropical storms. These experts are constantly learning from current and past weather events, such as Hurricane Katrina, which made landfall nearly 20 years ago this summer, just 50 miles where we stand here today in Gretna, Louisiana. NOAA has chosen to be here for our outlook today because at the Emergency Operations Center in Jefferson Parish to commemorate the 20 years since one of the worst natural disasters in U.S. history. In 2024, inland flooding was one of the most destructive forces during the hurricane season, with rainfall totals from Hurricane Helene exceeding 30 inches in communities located hundreds of miles from the coast. These storms are a stark reminder about how vital it is to prepare for the upcoming hurricane season now, before the storms begin forming in the Atlantic Basin. The Hurricane Outlook is just one preparedness tool that citizens, forecasters, and decision makers use to get ready for what lies ahead. The 2024 Hurricane Season Outlook that was issued in May last year was right on the money. The results that came in final, the named storms, the hurricanes, the major hurricanes, the accumulated cyclonic energy, or ACE, all fell within NOAA's predicted ranges. With that in mind, I want to recognize the incredible work and the dedication of the experts at the National Weather Service involved in both preparing this year's outlook and supporting the service operations day in and day out. Your work continues to save lives, and you inform and prepare communities each year ahead of these storms. As we approach the official start of the Atlantic hurricane season on June 1st, NOAA and the National Weather Service stand ready to serve the nation during and after and before the storms. Our vital role ensures public safety, it enhances national security, and promotes a robust American economy. That role includes NOAA's work in providing life-saving forecasts that ensure that people that are in harm's way will be given critical time to heed warnings. Throughout the hurricane season, forecasters with the National Weather Service will continue to issue timely and accurate forecasts for all expected hazards, from storm surge to high winds to tornadoes to inland flooding. Experts at NOAA's National Ocean Service stand ready to assist the Weather Service, providing critical disaster response and real-time storm surge information. They also provide information to ensure our waterways and our shipping lanes are accessible in the wake of a hurricane to quickly facilitate the flow of commerce. They deliver aerial imagery to ensure emergency responders and local decision makers have the information that they need to rapidly deploy the resources that are hit the hardest areas. The NOAA Hurricane Hunters are prepared to fly their P3 and G4 aircraft into and around hurricanes, with researchers on board collecting invaluable data that helps forecasters make accurate predictions and give scientists a better understanding of storm processes. To improve the understanding and prediction of how hurricanes intensify, NOAA research, in partnership with Cooperative Institute Marine and Atmospheric Studies at the University of Miami, are deploying new small aircraft drone systems, atmospheric profilers, and underwater gliders. These new technologies continue to advance our knowledge of hurricanes, fill critical data gaps, and improve the hurricane forecast accuracy. NOAA is also modernizing and upgrading its tropical atmospheric ocean buoy array with new capabilities, upgraded instrumentation, more strategic placement of the buoys, and higher frequency operations. Data from these buoys are used to forecast El Nino and La Nina, which influence hurricane activity. NOAA's model, the Hurricane Analysis Forecast System, or HAFS, will undergo an upgrade this season that is expected to further improve tracking of forecasts, which is critical for evacuation efforts. The upgraded model is expected to improve forecasts of rapid intensification. So when a storm winds increase 35 miles per hour within just 24 hours. And that's important as rapidly intensifying hurricanes can be some of the most devastating storms to our coastal communities. NOAA's researchers will also continue to enhance HAFS this season by testing a new multi-storm model capable of zooming in on multiple tropical cyclones to better understand how the energy of these storms impact each other. We are seeing that tropical storms, even hundreds or thousands of miles away, can influence each other. This season, NOAA's National Hurricane Center will use an updated hazard services application by the NOAA's Global Systems Lab to issue storm surge watches and warnings, which alert people of flooding caused by storms. Storm surge accounts for 50% of the fatalities of U.S. tropical cyclones. The National Hurricane Center will also provide a RIP current risk map, which there's storm activities whenever there's storm activities in the tropics. The map is uses the data from the National Weather Service forecast offices. Swells from distant hurricanes can cause dangerous surf and rip conditions along our U.S. coastline. NOAA's Global Tropical Hazards Outlook has been extended from 2 weeks to 3 weeks, providing additional time for preparation and response. NOAA's National Environmental Satellite Data and Information Services, in collaboration with NOAA's Office of Marine and Aviation Operations and NOAA Research, are deploying a new experimental radar system on the P3 Hurricane Hunter aircraft. The system will collect information on the ocean waves and the winds beneath the plane. These improvements and collaborative efforts demonstrate that now more than ever, NOAA is prepared for what the hurricane season may bring. Before I close, I want to take a moment to remind you, prepare now and stay ready throughout the season. Please visit www.hurricanes.gov/prepare to understand your own risk with hurricanes and begin the pre-season preparations now. Stay informed, Be ready to heed the warnings from your NOAA National Weather Service and your local emergency managers, who are so critical in protecting lives and property. Thank you all for joining us today. And now I'd like to bring up someone I admire greatly, the National Weather Service Director, Ken Graham, to the podium. And as many of you already know, Ken was the former director of National Hurricane Center before he became the director of the National Weather Service. And more importantly, he started with the Weather Service throughout his entire career. He started as an intern at a weather forecasting office. Ken has a long-standing ties to the emergency management community, and NOAA is incredibly fortunate to have him as the director of our National Weather Service. Welcome, Ken. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Laura. That was incredible introduction. I appreciate that. Thanks for those remarks. Those are great remarks from Laura, our acting at NOAA, and appreciate it. And just wanted to thank Laura also separately just for your support, because I can tell you, supporting us at the Weather Service is important to communities and saving lives. And Laura's been on our side and really helping us out. So it's just really appreciated. And Matt Rosencrantz right there. I just want to be clear. I always do this. He's the brains behind all this. The guy right here. So the whole forecast, everything, he's the one that does it. And every time I call him out, he says it's a whole team. So to you and your whole team, thank you just so much for all this. We have a couple other people that Mike Steele is in the room right there. He's from the Governor's Office of Homeland Security. So Mike, thank you for being here. And Mike Buchanan, the meteorologist in charge at the National Weather Service here. So just happy to have you here, Mike. So for Madam President, thanks for those remarks as well. It was wonderful. And Joe, Director Valiente, look, we go way back. We've had a few storms together over the years. So just appreciate all your service to the parish and beyond. Jefferson Parish is a model for all. I would think so. Jefferson Parish really is a model for the state and the country. So just appreciate all that. So look, it's great to be home. It's great to be home here in Louisiana. We landed. I just felt it. I just felt it right away. And I wanted to, you look at the 20th anniversary of Katrina on Sunday, August 28th, 2005, at 10:11 a.m., the National Weather Service Weather Forecast Office in New Orleans issued the following statement. Just take it in. Most of the area will be uninhabitable for weeks, perhaps longer. Airborne debris will be widespread. Persons, pets, livestock exposed to the winds will face certain death if struck. Power outages will last for weeks. Water shortages will make human suffering incredible by modern standards. Feel that? That went out on that day from the National Weather Service. And then you look back at the history and what happened. That was such an ominous call to action issued by the office 20 years ago this summer. Shortly after the product was issued, the city of New Orleans issued the first mandatory evacuation for the city. And I remember being at the Slidell office. We siphoned diesel fuel into ambulances trying to make their way to Shreveport. Trying to get diesel fuel into the ambulances. We were also helping our own employees, the Weather Service employees, no employees. We work in these communities. So we're part of these communities when they get hit. And we helped our own get through that whole thing. And many of our employees lost their homes. We had 2 employees lost members of their family. So it's interesting to, for NOAA in all these communities, that's our strength, being everywhere in these communities. Look, we've been busy since then. I mean, think about the modeling. Laura mentioned the incredible HAFS model. The modeling has never been better. Our service has never been better. Our ability to serve this country has never been better, and it will be this season as well. Just amazing. So since this devastation and Katrina, knowing the Weather Service, we've made incredible strides. I mean, you just look at how far we've come, the lead times, the accuracy, hurricane forecasting, as well as storm surge watches and warnings. All that's taken place since Katrina. We've really got better at focusing on the actual hazards themselves. Saffir-Simpson, remember, that wind scale is wind. So we've separated storm surge out of that. We've separated flooding out of that. We've separated tornadoes out of that. We've separated the hazards out of that Saffir-Simpson scale with a precision that's unprecedented. Half of fatalities back then were because of storm surge, and we've reduced that. We've done an incredible amount of work to get the watches and warnings for storm surge and being able to highlight that to reduce that number. Here's a few stats. Go back, think about this. 2005, our models had an average day 5 track error about 460 miles. Today it's 200. Think about that. 5 days out, 460 miles, that's your forecast. We've narrowed that down to 5 days to 200 miles. Incredible. 2020, a 5-day forecast is accurate as a 3-day forecast in 2005. It's a game changer. for emergency management, game changer for this country. What does it mean? Well, 30, 40, 50 miles makes a difference in an evacuation. The go, no-go evacuation, a city like New Orleans, Houston, Miami, that forecast makes a difference. And if you don't have to evacuate, you don't want to. People lose their lives in evacuations. We save a lot of lives, but people actually lose their lives in evacuations. So these decisions are not to be taken lightly. And it's not about that category. You all remember how many times I've said that. It's not about the category. Only 1 mile an hour separates the different categories. That's it. People get fixated. Oh, it's a Cat 4 now. That was a 1 mile an hour change. So you got to focus on the impacts. So just urging citizens, just especially on the coast and inland, to think about that. It's all about the impacts when we do these. Rapid intensification is a big topic. In other words, we're getting better. I mean, I look back 15 years ago. I always said, well, we're getting better with track, but I don't know, intensity, we're having a struggle with it. We're getting better with intensity. The HAFS model, other models are really getting a handle on this intensity thing. So you really think about how we're doing that. And HFIP. I mean, you think about the Hurricane Forecast Improvement Project, what an incredible advance that has been. And really look at the last 10 years, we've actually been able to make the track intensity as much as 40 to 45% better in the last decade. It's absolutely incredible. The HFIP program, think about the research to operations that we've had across NOAA. It's a whole NOAA effort. It's amazing. The whole NOAA family comes together with these things, and the amount of damage and loss of life that's been prevented because of HFIP is staggering. University of Miami came up with a study and calculated the improvements from 2007 to 2020 led to a cost avoidance of $60 billion. That's NOAA at work. That's NOAA at work right there. And we saw the forecast improvements firsthand in 2024. And the skill was better than ever. It was amazing to watch 2024. Helene was forecast to be a major hurricane. Take this, before it was even a depression. It was a bunch of clouds, a couple thunderstorms. And we were able to have the confidence in the modeling, confidence in our products to be able to say, we're going to issue a cone, we're going to put out the products, we're going to do that based on a clump of clouds. The National Hurricane Center was really aggressive doing that. And we were right on the money. And it saved a lot of lives. Milton, using HAFS, NOAA was able to look at the whole next generation of forecast modeling, predicted the rapid intensification better than any other model 2 to 3 days in advance. And it was something to watch that rapid intensification with Milton. 4 days notice that it would make landfall in Florida. It makes a difference to give emergency managers that kind of notice. And we're going to continue to make this progress. We've got more updates, as Laura said, more updates to the HAFS model, warnings and forecasts. We're going to be better services than ever. And we got a few things up our sleeve. HAVS is going to be improved. We got improvements already happened. We're going to do more improvements this summer. Track and intensity forecasts are going to be better than ever. And the potential tropical cyclone product from the Hurricane Center is an amazing product. It basically allows us to issue a cone, watches and warnings before the storm even develops. And we're gonna expand it from 48 hours out to 72 hours this year. If we can give people a heads up, we're going to do it, right? So up to 72 hours, we'll be able to give that information. Based on a clump of clouds, can rapidly develop into a Cat 5 storm, as we saw with Milton, in only a mere 2 or 3 days. We've seen that with Michael. We've seen that Camille. We've seen that in many different storms. We can now give emergency managers, can you imagine, Joe, 72 hours notice on something that's not even there? Yeah, not bad. You'll take it. Joe will take it before arrival. The strongest hurricanes are the ones that develop the fastest. Ready for this stat? I may repeat it more than once. Every Category 5 storm that's ever hit this country was a tropical storm or less 3 days prior. Take it in. You don't get goosebumps, then I'll repeat it and give you goosebumps. Every Cat 5 that hit this country was a tropical storm or less 3 days prior. The big ones that hit this country are fast. That's why the preparedness we're talking about today, you got to have the plan early, because the big ones are really quick, okay? So having that potential tropical cyclone gives us that extra time. We're also updating the forecast cone. It'll be operational this year. It was experimental last year. It's operational this year. And we're really trying to change the cone, because that was the number one question I got at the Hurricane Center director. What are you going to do with this cone? It's like, well, what are you going to do? There's no perfect solution with some of this, but we're trying. So with the cone, the better we get, the smaller the cone. And now we're adding the inland watches and warnings, so you can see that it's not just the cone. You're going to see the watches and warnings outside that cone and well inland. That's going to help the public be able to see this. It isn't just right there at the cone. The impacts are well outside the cone. And please remember what the cone is. We got to keep reminding the public. Every media outlet watching today, please help us remind to the public that the impacts are well outside the cone. The cone is a cone of error. It's where we expect the center of the storm to be 2/3 of the time. So 1/3 of the time it's outside the cone. So we've got to remember that. And this year we did such a great job of the forecast, the cone got smaller this year. So the better we do, the smaller the cone. It's based on the last 5 years of error. All right, so really we're looking at upgrades to the inland flooding. I mean, the water is the biggest killer in these things, but fatalities are the highest. Over the years, I've seen so many cases where the inland flooding causes more fatalities than on the coast because we're evacuating for surge. You look at Camille, you look at Ida, the impacts and fatalities in Virginia and New York City from flooding were significant, catastrophic. Okay, even a storm on the Gulf Coast, you have to convince somebody inland you're going to have big impacts, and it's not easy from a social science standpoint. So we've done a lot of work on storm surge. We're going to really look at inland flooding, and we're really evacuating this country for a storm surge. We need to really start looking at the inland flooding and how we're going to do that. Laura mentioned something important. You ready for this? We've done so much work in storm surge. We're actually losing more people to rip currents than we are storm surge. What a stat. We worked hard to reduce the storm surge fatalities, and now we're going to work on the rip currents and also keep on going with the inland flooding. And that's why the Hurricane Center is going to issue that new product for rip currents. That's a big one. All right. The other part of it is, NOAA's working really hard on flood inundation mapping, and we're going to have the whole country modeled by 2026. Why is this important? We can actually give an information and graphic on what's going to flood days before the flood. That's a game changer. And NOAA's really pioneering this, and we actually issued it in Helene, and that allowed a hospital in Tennessee to be able to evacuate and save every patient in there. They evacuated because of that product. And Nashville just got access to that product days before that, and they were able to put that out and save people in the hospital. Tampa General Hospital put up a hydro fence with early warnings. It's a trauma center in Tampa. They put up the hydro fence ahead of time and kept the storm surge out. Okay. All right. I could go on and on. I'm going to stop. Without further ado, did you come here for a forecast? I guess we can. Was that the reason, Kim? I think that's why we're here. All right. So without further ado, let's look at the numbers for the Atlantic hurricane season, the great work that Matt and his team did. So we're predicting an above average season once again, 2025 above average. And you can see the graphic up there. Specifically, it's a 60% chance of above normal season, 30% chance of a near normal season, and only a 10% chance to be below normal. So we're really looking at an above normal season once again. For the range of storms, we're calling for 13 to 19 named storms. That's when we get to 39 miles an hour when we name the storms. So 13 to 19 of those. Of these, 6 to 10 are forecast to become hurricanes. And that's when you get to the 74-mile-an-hour mark. And 3 to 5 is the number of major hurricanes. That's Cat 3 and above, with maximum sustained winds of 111 miles an hour or greater. The average is 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, 3 major. So above the average. So just appreciate all the hard work. And here we go. Remember what Laura said. They got every one of them right last year. So pretty good job with the crew. So we got to be ready. The ACE, the accumulated cyclone energy, 95 to 180% of what we would normally see. And that really heavily dependent on some of the stronger storms. You get a bunch of strong storms, it'll jump that ACE index really high. Why? Well, the team looked at it. Warm sea surface temperatures, probably the number one contributor to the whole thing. Not much wind shear. Wind shear tears the storms apart. We don't expect a lot of wind shear. And the African monsoons is a conducive spot to be able to launch out the waves, launch out the storms from there, which get to the warm waters and they develop, and an ENSO neutral situation that is conducive for this forecast. So everything's in place for an above average season. So no matter the forecast, what do we always say? Only takes one. It only takes one. So we got to be prepared right now. We've heard that from the parish president, Laura. We got to be ready. There's no lines for supplies today. No lines for gas, no lines for plywood, no lines for water. So while there's no lines, it's a good time to go out there and get your supplies and your kit, put it together. I've said this for decades. There's no such thing as Hurricane Justa. And the Weather Service being a NOAA, being a part of the WMO committee that names storms, I'll make sure we'll never have a Hurricane Justa. There's no such thing as Justa Cat 1. There's no such thing as Justa Cat 2, Justa Cat 3. Every one of them are different. The bigger the storm, the slower the storm, the more the impact. I don't care the category. So remember that. Hurricane 1 in Louisiana. What was that, Danielle? 1985, I think. And then you look at the slow storms in this state. Isaac was another one, right? Only a Cat 1, but look at the devastation in the states. You got to be prepared. Even a small one could put lives in danger. From my experience, the indirect fatalities can be as greater than the direct fatalities. In other words, down power lines. So just because the storm has passed doesn't mean the danger is past. Please, everyone in the media, keep reminding people that. We lose a lot of people after the storm. We can stop that. They're preventable. Down power lines, improper generator use, we've got to keep reminding people to properly use generators. That is a preventable fatality. If we could get the word out to make sure they're outside, far from the house, don't run them inside, and that sort of thing. And don't fill them up while they're hot. That happened to us last season. People were filling up with fuel while they were still hot, and they caught fire. Okay, the heat and critters. Louisiana, I remember a lot of storms here. What do you got after the storm? Why am I asking questions? It's like, snakes, gators, fire ant mounds. I've seen them all here. The dangers after the fact are significant. Last year, I got to fly into a hurricane for the first time. I flew into Helene with the hurricane hunters, and I had a whole new appreciation of the storm as we got pushed up about 1,000 feet in a matter of seconds. It was something to see. So big shout out to the hurricane hunters. And Laura mentioned the planes that they're ready to go. The hurricane hunters at NOAA and the Air Force, 53rd Reconnaissance, they're ready to go. And they're heroes, by the way. Just flying with them. They go towards the storm to get us away, right? Absolute heroes in these things. All right, so get the latest information, and I'm gonna wrap this up. Make sure to get the latest forecast, please. It changes. So, and social science tells us that people latch on to that first forecast. It's called anchoring. So we got to remind people, keep updating your forecast. Keep looking for the latest information, weather radio, wireless alerts, hurricanes.gov, listo.gov, para obtener información sobre el hurricane, como prepararse. Go to listo.gov for Spanish information, and everyone should prepare as they're going to get hit. So I'm going to end this with, we're ready. We're ready for this. I need everyone in the country to be ready as well. We're equipped with the best forecast models than we've ever had. We got great support, which is really appreciated. And we continue to get support from NOAA and the Department of Commerce, and we'll continue to improve our services to make sure this country is absolutely prepared. So we're ready here at NOAA. Are you? All right, Kim, back to you.
Thank you, Ken, for that outlook. We will move on to our Q&A portion of the event. In the remaining time that we have, we will take reporter questions, first from our in-room reporters, and then followed by our virtual attendees if time allows. So with that, please raise your hand if you have a question, and our comms team will run over the microphone to you, and we'll bring up our participants for Q&A right now, so we're prepared to answer your questions. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, we do the training ahead of time. So when we do the exercises, and Joe, didn't you say, I guess you've hosted some of those exercises here in the Parish EOC? Yeah, so we exercise it. So, what I've always said is basically, have that wonderful plan that you work, and then cut it in half and see if you can do it. So the conversation is basically, you gotta be ready to exercise that plan in 2 or 3 days. So we exercise those things. So Weather Service and NOAA, we work with our federal, state, local partners to be able to take them through these things. The local offices like New Orleans will work with the parishes, tons of presentations. We're hitting the streets to be able to get them to be able to do this. So our job's ahead of time to get everybody ready for this. And some of the misnomers, you think of a hurricane, you think of it going from Africa all the way across the Atlantic. Well, the truth is it could form in the Gulf and be here in 2 days. That's the kind of stuff that we talk with our partners to make sure that they're ready. I haven't seen any, really, we're working the same plans. We've been talking about that for probably 10, 15 years. So I think that's been out there for the whole time. So, having that as part of the exercise has helped for about a decade. Yeah.
And to the point, I think what we're doing, we have increased tremendously is the amount of exercise. So every process that we activate pre-storm, whether it's the food contract, whether it's the sheltering, public assist evacuation, getting our essential duty employees. We are exercising more now. That in turn allows us to be better prepared before the storm hits, and that enhances our ability to effect a better recovery and a quicker recovery.
And if you could let me know who your question is directed to so we can bring them up, that would be great. Yes, sir.
Or other officers, those that are understaffed?
Thank you for your thoughtful question. So the Hurricane Center is fully staffed up and we're ready to go. Weather prediction, forecasting, modeling is a top priority of ours. We, have the new HAFs and which was outperforming the other hurricane models. We've got GOES East is operational just of last month, providing satellite data that is feeding into the modeling system. So we are ready to go, really excited and definitely fully supportive of it. Thank you.
The Miami office?
I'm going to direct any, very specific questions to our public affairs team, just to make sure that the focus of this is on the hurricane outlook. Thank you so much.
Yes, in the bright blue shirt here.
The deputy partners. What's the next step? In addressing that issue.
Yeah, I think, as you know, talking over the years and, contemplating some of the social science part of it, we've got to convince people of that danger, right? When you live, 500 miles inland and you really don't think that you could be impacted like that, right? So it's hard for people to understand what has never happened before. That is a very difficult thing to communicate. I've seen meteorologists struggle with what's never happened before, right? So we've got to be able to visualize that. So that's why we're working so hard on the flood inundation mapping. We've got to be able to think about how to visualize it and have new tools to be able to say, hey, and they're not easy to get to them, right? How do you get that graphic to them? It's hard. But if we could really arm media, arm emergency management, states and local with some sort of visualization that actually sees this is how high the water is going to look, that makes a difference. Because if you tell somebody it's going to be 30 inches of rain, well, fine, what does that do? I don't, right? I'm going to say, well, I don't really know what 30 inches of rain is going to do to me, type of thing. That's what we got to figure out how to communicate. What that's going to do is going to do this to that river, it's going to do this to that stream. This is what it's going to do to your house. So I'm excited to be able to have that flood inundation mapping across the country. I think that'll happen, if you could get that out, Steve, 2-3 days ahead of time, we might be able to evacuate better in some of those areas. That's what we got to do. We got to be able to visualize it to convince people they're in danger. Yeah.
Yes, Navy blue jacket.
Hey, Laura, this is Judson Jones from the New York Times. I know there's not much you can say, but people are concerned about the fact that the cuts have affected the local offices, right? Even along the Hurricane Center, and there are plans in place to move people around and fix it. But what is the thing you are saying to these people that are fatigued and tired going into hurricane season? And also the people that are concerned about the forecast models and not having weather balloons and being able to predict these hurricanes as best as we have the last several years.
Thank you so much for being here in person. Yes. I'll just reiterate that we really are so proud of our team. So in communication, we are proud. The amount of forecasting that happens and how accurate they are with that is incredible to see in action. And just to say that, it is our top priority. Weather prediction, modeling, and protecting human lives and property is our top priority. So we are fully staffed at the Hurricane Center, and we definitely are ready to go. And we are really making this a top priority for this administration, for NOAA, for the Department of Commerce. So we are very supportive of our national weather staff. Thank you.
Yes.
Question for President Lee Sheng and then also Mr. Graham. President Shang, how concerned are you with the changing dynamics in FEMA and how that could affect response for locals here in the parish? And then, Mr. Graham, dovetailing off the questions about the resources, there's been a lot of talk about the shuffling within the National Weather Service. How concerned are you that these movements and whether you're going to be properly staffed for the locals in the field offices around the country?
Well, I'll say that we're always concerned no matter what's going on coming into hurricane season. What's still searing in my mind from what you said, which is frightening for anyone in my position, is that a Category 5 hurricane, every Category 5 hurricane is developed within 3 days was a tropical storm or less. That's those things concern me because it's that positioning that we have to do. And Ton, you know, we live in almost 1 million people here. How do you evacuate an area like this in 3 days or less? But look, I'll say this. I am very happy that disaster recovery emergency management is now on the front page and is making the news, because those of us who work this field know that at every level we can do better. And so I'm not afraid of a conversation. I think that all the changes that we're looking at is all geared toward making a quicker response, more efficient with the resources that we have, more efficient recovery, hopefully more money towards mitigation. So those conversations are happening. And from somebody like in my position, I'm glad that it's being covered in the national news. It's being talked about within the general public, because before we couldn't really get that conversation up in front. So that's, you know, I'm concerned about hurricanes separately from operational, but honestly, I'm glad that there's debate, healthy debate going on about what FEMA should look like, where our resources should go, the role for the state, the role for local governments, and conversations are good to have. And we will look at the recommendations. I'm a member of NACO, National Association of Counties, National Task Force. We were trying to get this conversation to the front burner last November, and it's here now. And so I'm glad it's happening. So yes. No, I think what's critical, and I think look, I think everybody's heart is in the right place to just make sure the response is quicker. And we know, I'm not trying to criticize anyone at every level of government. I'm part of government. We know government can be slow. And from a local government perspective, we know recovery is extremely slow, heartbreakingly slow. And they will acknowledge that too, because it's a bureaucracy. It's well-intentioned people trying to do the best in a very large bureaucracy. I worked in the federal government too. I can tell you, you know, we're hardworking, but you're in a much larger system. So, you know, knocking it down, getting more response to the states, you know, in theory is a good thing to be talking about. We want to make sure the resources are there though. And if the responsibility is going to come to the state, I think the state and those of us in the state just want to make sure the resources are there, the skill, the experience is there for the response to be adequate.
Okay, the second part of that is, you know, as Laura said, you know, the Hurricane Center is fully staffed. And, you know, I'm going to make sure that our offices, when there's a hurricane threat, that's going to have the resources that they need to make sure every warning goes out. And I do want to say that, you know, with NOAA's support, Laura's support, and Commerce's support, and we're looking at some tools to be able to look at long-term and how to make sure that we continue to have the staffing that we need long-term. So just appreciate that support. We're working on some things. And, you know, we had some folks go, and, you know, but we're going to make sure that we have everything that we have on the front lines. Every warning is going to go out. Yep.
Yes, right in the middle here.
Rachel Hanley with WWL. I am hearing that the National Hurricane Center is fully staffed, but we know that there have been cuts to NOAA, and we have heard from some meteorologists that that's affected the resolution of forecasts. Question for Ken Graham, is this going to affect hurricane forecasting this year relative to years past?
The answer is no. So, I mean, we've got the HAFS model is the best model we've ever had. And, you know, the question keeps coming up at the upper air. Upper air is one piece of observations that we have. We use satellites, we use ground-based information. We're actually going to work with industry. You know, we're looking at different type of balloon technology able to not just go up and back to get the balloon information, but there's some private companies that are actually longer term type of balloons that get soundings along the way. So we're looking at supplemental information, working with them. So the balloons are just one piece of the information, but the models are as good as they've been. We're going to continue to improve those. I'm excited about HAFS to see how it does this year. And we're not going backward with HAFS. We're actually going forward and making those improvements. So yeah, we'll be able to make sure that the warnings go out and we have the data that we need. And the hurricane hunters are also ready to go, both at NOAA and the Air Force. That information that we get from the hurricane hunters is crucial to the hurricane forecast. And I've seen anywhere from 10 to 18 to 20% increase in the accuracy of track and also intensity with the data from the P3s and the C-130s and also the G4 at the upper levels. It makes a big difference, and they're going to be ready to go as well.
All right, we have a couple questions from our online attendees. Several different iterations of this question, but I'll call out Ken Mahan from the Boston Globe asking about whether our outlook can be specific to certain regions, talking about the possibility of a tropical cyclone impacting a certain region in the country or in a U.S. territory.
I'll start it, and Matt's the expert. Look, these outlooks are incredible to give us an overall idea of how busy the season could be. It is not a forecast for landfall. It's important. That forecast does not forecast where storms are going to occur, right? I've seen you can see sudden shifts or different shifts in the Bermuda High, and all of a sudden all the storms stay offshore, or a shift there can take all the storms in the Gulf. So it's those type of things that could change the entire season, basically, on impact, right? So that's the biggest thing to get away from this. It's really looking at the overall season, but not really anything for landfall. That's important on that one. I get it right? Good.
All right, another question online, a few different iterations of this as well, but Seth Bornstein from the Associated Press would like to know, you mentioned that the primary driver of this particular outlook is the above average temperatures in the Atlantic. How much of a factor is climate change in that ocean temperature right now?
Look, you got, when you have a planet that's warmer, you look at the ocean temperatures could be impacted by that. So yeah, and really the warmer ocean temperatures is really consistent with us being in a more active season, more active period of time, more active era associated with the hurricane activity. So we're seeing that. And when it comes to, some of the factors that we see associated with hurricane season, we're not really seeing any changes in the numbers or even the strength when it comes to, a warming of the planet. But we are seeing rainfall. We're seeing heavier rainfall rates. And, you go to these communities, you're seeing some of the rainfall, warmer planet, the atmosphere holds more moisture. So you are seeing a situation where some of the rainfall rates are higher. And that's, once again, I stressed water huge in my comments. And we need help to be able to really reach out to the communities to let them know the dangers of water. Inland, coastal, the rainfall is heavy year round. We're seeing some of these floods, and we're hearing from more and more communities. It's like, wow, I've lived here my whole life. I've never seen some of these rainfall rates like that. So we are seeing, that's the biggest evidence that we see associated with the tropical seasons, just really looking at that heavy rainfall. We got to be really prepared for that. And you got more people on the coast. A lot more people have moved to the coast. You got the social economic factors associated with moving to the coast, and there's a lot more people in harm's way as well. So there's a lot of different factors that go into that whole thing. So that's it, Eric.
Another question from Rebecca Hersher of NPR. She says, I appreciate that Ken shared generator safety tips. Can you share any other specific preparation recommendations for people living in hurricane-prone areas?
Getting ready for hurricane season, it's easy to say just have a kit, right? Not everybody has the ability to get a kit. So I think the number one thing to do before hurricane season is know your threat. Are you living along on a river or a bayou, since I'm here, right? Does it flood? The rivers and bayous, they flow backward. The water pushes up from storm surge. There's places that you don't normally expect to flood. This water flows backward into these channels and floods people that may not have flooded before. So know your threat. If you're along a river, along a bayou, you know to prepare for that flooding. The other ones, look around your house. Look at the trees. We lose a lot of people to falling trees. right? So look around, what can you do to mitigate some of those dangers? And Danielle and I've done surveys in the local area where it looks like the biggest tree in the world just got hit by a tornado. You look at it, there are 1 billion termites in the dang thing. It was ready to fall anyway, right? So these type of things, really look at your threat. Are you on the coast, right? Know your evacuation plan if you're on the coast. The biggest thing also as well is check your insurance. There's deadlines associated when you could get flood insurance. There's deadlines associated with when you could get some of the insurance. So check your insurance plan, make sure you're covered, right? There's different types of insurance depending on where you live along the coast or inland. The number one thing, depend on your emergency manager. Let me tell you, these emergency managers are some of the most amazing, dedicated people across this whole country to keep people safe. Listen to them. I've seen it 1,000,000 times. The information that the emergency managers are getting and the parish president making the call on evacuations comes from us. It's our forecast. We actually provide impact-based decision support. We're eye to eye with them. So we'll have somebody in the EOC, we'll have somebody doing the briefings several times a day. So everything that they do is based on science, everything that they do is based on what we're doing. So the emergency managers and NOAA and the Weather Service, we're tight, right? So listen to them. The number one thing is just make sure you know where to get information. And here's the last bit of advice. If you don't know what to do, ask. You got the local Weather Service forecast office, you have resources, Red Cross, you got the parishes and counties across this country. If you don't know what to do, ask. It's such a simple thing, right? But a lot of people won't. And then during the danger, they won't know what to do. Please ask ahead of time.
Okay, we are starting to run short on time, so this will be our last question for today. Scott Dance of the Washington Post has a question for Matt Rosenkrantz. How are you factoring in ENSO status into this forecast?
Yeah, so the ENSO status, we have a 54% chance of being in an ENSO neutral this year. And that's really going to not tramp down on the signals in the Atlantic where those warm sea surface temperatures are. We do know that during neutral events, you had about 2.5 to 3 more named storms than you would during El Nino events. So we're allowing for that. That's what the forecast is for that above normal season, because that ENSO neutral will not get in the way of the favorable conditions that are in the Atlantic as well.
All right, that concludes our press conference for today. And once again, I'd like to remind you that all materials, all the graphic slides are available on NOAA.gov for your reference. Again, the press team can be reached at nws.pa@noaa.gov. And thank you very much for joining us today. Have a great day.